And happy Monday to you and happy July. How about that? We are sliding into the third quarter, whether you're ready or not. Hard to believe that half a year is already over, but it is. It is in our rearview mirror. And now it's time to take on the second half of the year. Put your head down, put your shoulders into it. And man, here we go. Be ready for the kickstart because we're going to get going right after the countdown. All right, and welcome aboard. It is time for the kickstart. Happy July 1st. Hope everyone is having a good start to their week. Got a little bit of allergies and stuff going on, so my voice is a little crazy today. Hopefully, I don't cough too much and run you guys off, but we have got some interesting things to tell you. Not going to be real long today because, once again, my voice is kind of and I don't want to, y'all have to listen to me too much. Don't forget that at any point that you have any questions or comments, we can take those on here. If you are watching this afterwards, then you can also put those on your questions or any comments, and we'll certainly address those as well. All right, let's jump right into this thing. First of all, if you have never been here before, then my name is Harlan Pickett. I'm president of Eagle Care Health Solutions. I do this because I feel like it's a responsibility that was put on me by the good Lord, quite honestly, to share what's going on in our industry so that you can do a better job as an advisor or as a consumer of healthcare to know what's going on in the industry. You certainly can be a better advocate for yourself if you know that there is a way to do that. If you ever have any questions about any of this stuff and you want to reach out to me personally, please do that. All right, so for our very first, the rise of Ozempic face. I love this one, man. This was so funny. I've heard this term multiple times, Ozempic face. And it's something people have talked about as a result of folks losing weight. But the term was actually coined by, of all people, plastic surgeons, because they were having people come to them saying, hey, I've got this loose skin now because I've lost this weight. Can you help me out? Well, now the numbers are coming out and it's very interesting. And this is directly from the American Society of Plastic Surgeons. And they are showing that there was an 8% increase in facelifts between 2022 and 2023. And they are linking that directly to Ozempic, Wegovy, and other weight loss GLP type drugs. This was a report that they put out on June 25th. It's showing, that while GLPs can certainly lead to significant weight loss, what that really does is it leaves patients with excess skin. Some GLP-1 users noted dramatic facial sagging. This is a real deal. I've heard about it before, but now it's actually reported, of course, by these plastic surgeons saying, hey, it's a real thing. This is what's caused this uptick. Now, what's very interesting on top of this, and this goes right in line with what you would think it would, is that it's not just facelifts. Plastic surgeons are performing more tummy tucks, more liposuction procedures, more lower body lifts, arm lifts, and thigh lifts. So all of those procedures were up in 2023. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that increase, there is some of it that can certainly be attributed to people putting those things off as we went through COVID. But as more people are losing weight and finding, these GLPs to do that, we're not talking right now. I talk a lot about these things and we talk about the cost and how they hurt health plans and all, but the numbers show that these things really do help people and that help them lose weight. Is it going to be a long-term answer? I guess we're going to find out, because if you don't change your lifestyle, typically nothing's going to work that way. But I think it's an interesting thing that we're seeing another place. So now think about it. This is two places where we're seeing a dramatic change in the cost of healthcare. Number one, the cost of these medications. And number two, then people getting things done in plastic surgery. And of course, that's going to be on their own ticket, because you're just not seeing that, folks are going to, whether it's an employer plan, no matter what kind of plan, quite honestly, unless it's something to do with some type of recovery from an accident, or a recovery from, maybe breast cancer surgeries and stuff such as that. Cosmetic is not covered. Even in some cases, it's not covered on some health plans, even though it's because of a situation like that. But I thought this was an interesting thing. Ozempic face, right? The sagging face because you lost weight. Just another thing to worry about when you take GLP-1s. Although clearly the weight loss for many, many people is well worth it. Just there it is. All right. So PBMs are back in the headlines and on the front page. So what does that mean? Well, even though we have seen a huge decline in newspaper readership, there are still obviously some traditional newspapers out there, long time in the business, and they have a lot of power behind their name. One of those is the New York Times. And the New York Times this past Friday put out an article that was very critical of PBMs, and it was a front page story. So this raised the bar, right? This put it in a whole different light, raised the bar and shined a brighter light on the pharmacy benefit managers. It's a very long and critical article, very critical of PBMs. It's on the front page. It ran this past Friday. I'm sure you can go out there and find it in many different formats. I have not read the whole thing. It is very, very long. But the bottom line is what the story is saying is that PBMs steer patient towards pricier drugs, charge steep markups on what would otherwise be inexpensive medications, and there is billions of dollars in hidden fees. Now, we've talked about this for years, and we've talked about how it's very difficult to understand what PBMs do. But I mentioned even in my stories a couple of weeks ago that if it wasn't a profitable business, even with the new PBMs that are doing transparent and say they're fiduciary, if it wasn't still very profitable, we wouldn't have new PBMs coming in almost daily. There's new PBMs jumping into this thing all the time. And that wouldn't be the case if there wasn't still a lot of money to be made there. I am not saying I'm critical of those guys. Hey, everyone's in this thing for profit. This is the United States. It's capitalism. There is a difference, though, between profiting and profiteering. And I believe a lot of the new PBMs are profiting. They're not profiteering the way some of the big guys are. Apologies. But that is certainly the case with some of the bigger ones. There was also a story that I read here a few days ago where CVS or Caremark in this case, was defending what they were saying that if we're so bad, then why do people keep choosing us? Well, people keep choosing you because they don't know that there's another way. They don't know that there's a better way. And I think that's the case with a lot of things over a lot of time that can work this way. It's the way it's always been, right? We just keep on doing it because we don't know any different. While I am not necessarily a huge fan of the New York Times overall, the fact that they brought this to the forefront by putting it on their front page, maybe that will help shine a light on some of these businesses that continue to use the big three and don't give any thought to these other folks. I was at an event in Houston last week that some really big companies and health plans for unions. Sorry, I got the foggy brain today. Health plans for unions are still using traditional plans. They're still using fully insured ASOs or big insurance company ASOs, even though they know that they don't want to, even though they know that they would be better served not to do that. They're still doing it because they don't want the pushback from their union members or from their employees to be doing something without that logo on there. This is what we have to fight against. This is what we have to bring to the forefront, that you're going to get better service by not having that, But man, it's a tough deal. It's a tough deal. But this is the kind of stuff that can only help us in the long run by a major publication like this putting out there that there is a problem and that there are alternatives out there. So, applaud to the New York Times for taking the stance of putting that out there. All right. Finally, today, want to talk about the Chevron ruling. So this is very interesting because whenever I first heard about this, of course, I'm thinking it's going to apply to a lot of things, but certainly not going to apply to anything that we do. It's also known as the Chevron Doctrine. It was Chevron versus the National Resource Defense Council. And this is a precedent that was set back in 1984. The Supreme Court actually overruled this 6-3 on this past Friday. This is one of the many things that was put out that the Supreme Court actually made a ruling on last week. Well, what was that precedent? What was it? Why does it matter to us in healthcare? Because it required courts to give deference to the actions of federal agencies, except in situations in which the agencies are being unreasonable. Like, what? It requires courts to give deference to the actions of federal agencies, except in situations in which the agencies are being unreasonable. Well, man, that seems like most all the time, right? To the common person, to the person that thinks logically, but how wishy-washy is that? Who decides what's being unreasonable? Well, this was very, very, it was used all the time by the courts then to support things that maybe it shouldn't have or wouldn't have or couldn't have if this wasn't out there. So relying on the Chevron doctrine has forced courts to rule in many cases involving laws such as the Administrative Procedures Act. Now, if that somewhat sounds familiar to you, the Administrative Procedures Act, it has been noted time and time again in many recent lawsuits that have come across in the healthcare industry. So whether or not it is the fiduciary rule, whether or not now the new fiduciary rule that is affecting really the financial services side, not the health insurance side, all of the different rules that have come out on our side, on the healthcare side, there are so many things that they have put towards this Administrative Procedures Act. But because of the Chevron doctrine, they're able to use that and almost with a blanket coverage dismiss things. So it's going to be very interesting what occurs now because of this, because it really is saying what was unreasonable before. There was really nothing to define that. It was saying we've got to take the side of the federal agency. We have to, unless they're doing something unreasonable. And then it's totally up to the court itself to determine if something was unreasonable or not. That it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. There's a number of, after the show, of course, the link to this story will be in the comments as well. Go out there and check it out if you want to, because there's a number of opinions that were written in there by the different justices on why they thought or how they thought it could impact different things. And some of them were very, very interesting. I didn't want to take up all your time today. And as you can see, I'm already kind of breaking down in my coffin and such. So I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time going through that today, but I certainly recommend getting out there and learning more about this and how it could impact you. And I'm sure that the lovely Chris Deacon will have her opinion on this out on LinkedIn. So be sure and go check her out. She's always got some great things to put out there. One of the great minds in our industry to keep us abreast of what's going on. It's always great to hear it from a lawyer that's on our side, to hear what's going on. A great mind, and she writes things very, very well. So be sure and check out LinkedIn and find her comments on this, because I'm sure she'll have something to say. All right, let me see if we have any comments. I don't see any. I actually appreciate that I don't have any today, so that we can go ahead and cut these things off. All right, guys, thank you so much for being with me. Catch you next week on the Kickstart. Y'all have a blessed week.